Hi, everyone, and welcome back to today's episode and the show. We are going to do an episode today that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I've had it on just like an ideas list for a while, but am finally getting a chance to get some thoughts down, sit down and record it. But I wanted to have an episode on the show that you could send to your people who you're probably inspiring to live a more active lifestyle, maybe to start running just by being a runner yourself. I know that those listening may also benefit from this episode, or at least nod along and relate to it, because I'm going to talk a lot about things that I would recommend as a coach or things that I really wish I knew when I was starting out my running journey, or just, stuff I've learned along the way as a runner now for over a decade. But I really think you'll probably have someone in mind who you're like, oh, I could send them this. Because I think whenever people approach us as runners and they're like, well, I wish I could start running. Like, what do you think I should do? It'd be nice to just be like, here, listen to this episode. Start here. Because I don't know about you, but when I started running in probably 2013, 2014. Social media was definitely a thing, but the running community on social media definitely wasn't like what it is today. And running was not as complicated as it can be made to be today, just because of the internet. And running's a pretty simple sport, compared to a lot of other sports. Like you're putting one foot in front of the other. And I think the more into it, it's an Olympic sport, right? Like there's ways that we can make it a lot more complicated and a lot more high tech and detailed. But when you're first starting out, you don't need any of that. You just want to know where to start, right? So send this to your running friends, your family members that want to start running, or maybe you've inspired to start running, because I certainly know that this has happened to me before, and I will be sending people this episode as well in my own life. So we're going to go through a couple different topics today, in terms of like things that when you're a beginner runner, you're just starting out, maybe even if you're like a beginner to fitness and you want to use running as a form of like fitness, this is stuff that I think you should know as a running coach, a sports dietitian, and a personal trainer. So, hi guys, if you are new here listening to this, welcome to the Hollyfield Nutrition Podcast. I am Holly Samuel, and like I said, I am a running coach, personal trainer, and a sports dietitian. And I've been a runner since probably, yeah, like 2013-ish. It's 2025 at the time of recording this. It was not my first sport. I grew up as an equestrian. I rode and competed horses at a pretty high level, through and after college, and then kind of stopped that sport, burnt out a little bit from the politics of that sport. Still love horses, very much miss it. But I found running in college as a form of stress relief. It was also a way to like control my body composition, which kind of led me down a little bit of a slippery slope when it came to having a more compulsive relationship with exercise. That was then improved a lot by getting into the sport of running and viewing running as a way to move my body and a way to see what I could get out of myself as a person athletically, but also mentally. And it turned into such a positive thing in my life that has then snowballed into becoming my career. I'm not a professional athlete by any means, but I do help runners of all levels with their nutrition, with their health, and with their training. So if you are new, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here and be a part of your journey as you get started running. Maybe you're listening to this while exercising, maybe you're driving, maybe you're doing laundry, but I hope you find this episode helpful and can take away some things, because if you Google, like, what do I need to start running? I think you'll probably find a lot of different things, and some of it will be a lot more complicated than it really needs to be. So the first thing that I think most people in the running community can agree with is that when you start running, you really want to get yourself a good pair of running shoes. Running is a great sport because anyone can do it, right? You just have to step outside your door or on a treadmill or an indoor track, put one foot in front of the other, and you're good to go, right? But as you do get more into this sport, there's a lot of different things that we can purchase gear-wise to make it more complicated. And I don't think you need any of that starting out. I'm going to focus on the things that I think are really, really helpful to make it an enjoyable experience for you and health promoting. And running shoes are key. So when I say running sneakers or running shoes, I don't just mean like go to Walmart or Target and pick out the cutest color. I did that when I was first starting out and it destroyed my knees and my feet. And I hated running because I thought I just had bad knees. But running shoes are designed for running. They're different than walking shoes. They're different than just like fashionable shoes. They're different than lifting shoes or basketball shoes. And can you technically run a little bit in these things? Of course, absolutely. But once you're running for more than like, I'd say 3 minutes at a time, you're going to notice a difference when you're running in running shoes because they're designed for running. They're designed to absorb that shock from the high impact nature of running. They're going to be a lot more comfortable and get you less injured. So what you want to do is you want to go to your local running store. If you have one, you can Google local running stores in your area. And if you don't have one, I'm going to give you a couple other options as well. But if you have a local running store, you want to go check them out because the running nerds are going to work there and they're going to be able to fit you with a pair of shoes that fits your foot, that fits your type of running gait. And that's going to probably get you the furthest. They can be a little bit more expensive. And again, that is because they are designed for running and running is a very high impact sport. So the shoe technology also is a little bit more complicated than your typical, fashion or walking shoe. But in my opinion, very much worth the investment. You can always look for sales. I'm also a fan of buying things on like Amazon or Dick's Sporting Goods types of stores because a lot of running stores will sell the same brands as Amazon and Dick's Sporting Goods, or even the running shoe brand website itself will run sales at different times. So while I do think it's good to support our local running stores, because these people work very, very hard and are very, very important in the running community for this reason exactly, because they sell shoes to help people, get on the roads. You can definitely find deals in other places on the exact same shoe if you are really on a budget and strapped for money. Know that most running shoes are going to cater to different types of running gaits. And this has to do with the way your foot like looks when it hits the ground. Some people can be, can have more of like a neutral gait. Some people need more of a stability shoe. And one of the really big things from like running research that's important when it comes to shoes is that they feel comfortable when you're wearing them. When you're wearing them, you shouldn't really be thinking about your shoe. It should be so comfortable that you're like not thinking about it, like most good clothes, right? So we want it to be comfortable. We want a little bit of an assessment from a professional who does this for a living to say, yeah, this is a good shoe for the type of runner that you currently are. And know that this can change over time. So if you get more into running, it's not a bad idea to go get fitted again, a year or 2, 3, 4 years down the road, because your running gait can change as you just become more well-developed and a little bit stronger, which is pretty cool. Know that too with running stores, I believe Dick's Sporting Goods and a lot of the brand websites are this way too. They do have a return period, so you can try a shoe typically for like a month-ish. You just want to check on the policy specifically from where you bought the shoe. And know that sometimes sale items are final, but typically most places, if you buy them, you can try them for a month, just try to keep them relatively clean. And if you're like, wow, I hate these, typically you can just return them in that month period. So we really, 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 really want to get a pair of running shoes for running. And when I say for running, I also mean trying not to, if you're able, again, this is me getting picky, but if you are able to like try to just really run and exercise in these shoes, they're going to last longer. So typically running shoes need to be replaced every 300 to 500 miles that you put on them. Of course, when you're first starting out, you're like, well, that's a lot of miles. I'm never going to replace these. But know that if the shoe is old and you've had it for multiple years too, the foam will just wear down sitting on the shelf too. So If you try to keep them specifically for running, they'll typically last like a little bit longer. But if you're walking a lot in them or just like doing life in them and you're like, I paid $100 for this pair of shoes, I'm going to wear them, dang it. Just know that they won't last as long for running and you'll need to replace them more frequently in order to avoid like knee pain, joint pain, and potentially injuries. So this is definitely the first thing you should do. When I was starting out, my mother-in-law, she wasn't my mother-in-law yet at the time, but she was very into fitness and running. And she took me to a running store when she learned that basically I'd started running. And she got me fitted for shoes and it made such a big difference. Such a big difference. I had even, I think, gone to Dick's and done a little bit of research and tried to like get a pair of shoes that I thought would be good. And the pair that they ended up fitting me for was so much better. So definitely recommend. So next, to kind of keep it in the gear category, we want to get some clothes. And you don't have to overcomplicate this either. If you are just like, I've got some shorts and like, gym shorts, t-shirt, I'm going to go out and run, for 10 minutes and that's going to be my running outfit. Awesome. Like you're fine. You don't really need to overthink this, but I know for a lot of people, especially if you are in a larger body or you have like chafing problems, or maybe you have a larger chest or, it's summer or it's hot where you live or it's cold where you live, having like sweat wicking, non-chafe, athletic gear can make it a lot more enjoyable of an experience. Can you run in a cotton t-shirt and cotton shorts? Sure. But you will chafe eventually, depending on how long you're out there for, the weather, etc. And if you are living somewhere where it's seasonal and it gets cold, having like a jacket, some warmer gear, gloves, that type of thing, sweatshirts, that can make a really big difference as well, just to keep you warm while you're out there. Because this is definitely something we can do year round. Getting outside has a lot of health benefits, even if, your routine's a little bit different than it was like in the summer months. So we can get gear in a lot of different places. You can spend a bit of money on this if you go to places like Athleta or Lululemon. But if you're on a budget, I'm a really, really big fan of these three places for running gear. I've been a runner for over a decade. I've run 9 marathons at the time of recording this podcast. And a lot of my gear is from these places and not the super expensive, like running specific places. I spend my money on the shoes and I don't really spend as much on the clothes because I have found things that work really, really well for me and my body and hold up to the test of time and sweat and all of that good stuff that don't have to be hundreds of dollars. So my top 3 favorites are Amazon. And I'm going to link my Amazon storefront below so that you can see what my personal favorites are and go check those out. A lot of them are like under $20. Old Navy Active. Old Navy Active is a great line. Great, great, great line. All of my leggings and a lot of my shorts and other clothes are from Old Navy Active. The sports bra that I'm wearing right now at the time of recording this is from Old Navy Active. Cheap stuff, good quality. Fun fact, same company that owns Athleta. And I think the Old Navy Active stuff sometimes is better than Athleta. And it's about half or less of the price. Big fan of that. They also pretty much always have a sale happening on their website. So check that out. I will also link my LTK page, which has a lot of my favorite Old Navy stuff linked. And then I also love Dick's Sporting Goods. They have a lot of different brands at Dick's Sporting Goods, but the DSG brand for both men and women is fabulous. It's like their store brand that is on like the more economical side. And they have some really, really good basic staples there. The shorts that I'm wearing are from there that are also very affordable and super cute. So those are my top 3 favorites for running clothes. And know that if you are experiencing like chafing or you're like, I'm trying to find things that fit me, or I just like want to be, comfortable and look a certain way when I'm exercising, it can make a really big difference. So do check that out. Know that you don't, necessarily need like the Nike stuff that's like $50. Or the Lululemon outfit that's like $300. Can you get it? Absolutely. Of course, you do you. But you can exercise in whatever you want to exercise in that makes you comfortable. So go check out those places. Socks. Socks are very, very important for runners because they go on our feet and our feet are doing a lot of work. So know that you can run in any socks, just like you can run in any clothes, but the longer you go, and if you're experiencing blisters, chafing, that type of thing, it might have to do with your running shoes and your running socks. So I'm a really big fan of the following three brands when it comes to running socks. They're like a little bit more expensive than your run-of-the-mill sock pack, but it's for a really good reason. It's because you can literally run a marathon in them and not have any problems. Know by experience myself. That is Balega, Features, and Bombas socks. Those are the top three. They sell all of them at Dick's Sporting Goods. You can get them online. You can get them on Amazon. They're in my storefront that I'll link below. But these are really, really good brands of socks, and they make a really big difference because they're sweat wicking. Some of them are like compression, so they don't move on your foot, which means they don't chafe or blister. They have different sizes. Very important stuff here. The other thing that you want to get, and it doesn't really, in my opinion, matter how large or small of a person you are, but if you're going to run and your skin is going to sweat and touch itself, you need some sort of anti-chafe like stick or balm to put on your skin. This makes such a big difference, especially in like the summer months. I put this all over like my body in the summer months, like under the armpits, between the thighs, like under the chest area. And that is something like Body Glide or Gold Bond Anti-Chafe Stick. There's also Squirrel Nut Butter and some other like funny named type of things. But they basically look like a deodorant stick, and you could also use deodorant to be anti-chafe because it'll also work pretty well, or things like Vaseline or Aquaphor. But I'm a really big fan of the anti-chafe sticks. The Gold Bond Anti-Chafe Stick is my personal favorite because it's just it's not going to get messy, if that makes sense, and it'll stay in place. You need it, trust me. So if you're chafing, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just a sweaty person, and that's what you're doing on purpose. So make sure you put some anti-chafe on you, especially in the summer. That and some sweat wicking gear will make you golden, all the difference in the world. So kind of in a similar vein as gear, I want to talk about apps and like ways to keep track of your running progress. You don't need any of these, but if you're someone where you're like, I kind of just want to know how far I went, or I'm training for a race, like I'm training for a 5K and I'm following a plan and I need to know how far I'm supposed to be going. These apps have free options that are really handy, very simple, and awesome starting out. I used a lot of these starting out, and that is Strava, My Runkeeper, Map My Run. These are the top three that basically they've got like a GPS. You just hit start and it'll record how far you're running, the pace that you're running at, the distance, the time. They'll also record other things like the time of day. They'll estimate calorie burned, which I don't recommend looking at because it's not really accurate and not really what we want to be paying attention to when it comes to exercise, as this can create more of a compulsive relationship with exercise. But there's a lot of things that these apps can track for you. And they can give you, typically they'll give you little like updates in your earphones or just out loud if you have your phone on you, to give you an update, like 10 minutes, 1 mile, that type of thing. So these are really helpful. They're free. You can also use like a wearable. I know a lot of people have Apple Watches and Fitbits and stuff like that to record this type of stuff, but you certainly don't need any of those things. If you do get more serious into running and you're like, I want like a good running watch to keep track of some of this stuff, the top two brands in the field right now are Garmin and Coros. I'm wearing a Coros right now. And they're pretty expensive. They're typically hundreds of dollars. But they do keep track of a lot of different things. They have other types of activities you can track. You can do sleep and a lot of other data tracking type stuff on these. I don't use any of that. I just use it for running, but they're really good. They're good watches. You certainly don't need them though, especially when you're starting out or even ever. So you can check out those apps too, if you're just looking for a way to keep track of it. But something that I think is good to know in the beginning when you're running is you can keep track of all this stuff however you want and however makes you excited and proud. You can track distance, like if you're more into, I want to run like a mile, or I want to run 3 miles, or I want to run 10 miles, or whatever it is. I want to run 5K. You can keep track in either miles or kilometers, depending on where you're from and what resonates. You can also keep track of this just from like time on the clock. I want to run for, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. There's a lot of different ways to keep track of it. Nothing's right or wrong. But I tend to find keeping track by time is like easier because most people just have a phone or have like a stopwatch that they can use. You can also keep track, this is what I did at the beginning, of just landmarks. Like I'm going to run to that stop sign without stopping. Okay, now I'm going to try to run to the end of the street without stopping. Okay, now I'm going to try to run to, the gas station without stopping. Whatever landmarks you have. This is actually called fartlek running. Super funny word. But it just means like running to a landmark. Basically, it is an official term in running terminology. So even if you're like, oh, I'm just going to run to that landmark, that's a real thing. That's awesome. So that's definitely something you can do as well. And you don't have to keep track of any other data. That's what I did starting out. I tried to run to the end of my parents' street, and then I tried to run to the end of the bridge that they lived by, and then I tried to run to my cousin's house. And I came up with these different goals as I got more endurance. So those are all, that's all the gear you need. That's it. You need shoes, socks, comfortable clothes, and Body Glide, and maybe something to keep track of your running stats. In terms of some things to consider for pacing and actual biomechanics and running fitness, this is a science that I could probably dedicate an entire podcast to, not an episode, like an entire show to. It can get so dang complicated, but it does not need to be. It should be, honestly, quite simple. You don't need to worry about finessing your running gait. You don't need to worry about doing the perfect pre-run routine or the perfect post-run routine. However, it's also a good idea, just from an injury prevention standpoint and a health standpoint, to essentially warm up a little bit before you start running, especially if you're doing it first thing in the morning or like after sitting at a desk for a long period of time. It's good to just not go in super stiff. And it's also a good idea to cool down just to help your heart rate come back down so you can go back into your typical human mode instead of your fight or flight response mode. So pre-run warm-up should look like a dynamic warm-up. So this is not like static stretching where we're just like, holding our quad for 30 seconds. This is more fluid movement. We don't really want to be like stretching, but we want to be moving. The idea is to get some blood flowing to the muscles. So this is things like leg swings. Maybe you could do a couple squats, some glute bridges, lunges, or even just some like jumping jacks. That can do the trick. You can pick like one or two of those things, just to kind of get your body moving a little bit. And then it's also good practice just to walk a little bit before you run, and not just, go gung ho out the gate as fast as you can. Walk, for a minute or two, get a little bit warmed up, and then you're good to go for a run. Same thing for post run. The best post-run cool down is walking. So even if you finish your run and then you walk like 2-3 minutes back home, that can make a really big difference just in your body starting to cool down, your heart rate coming down, and you getting back into, again, like I said, regular person mode, from a hormonal standpoint, instead of like fight or flight response, stressed out, running away from a bear mode. It allows your breathing to come back down and your body temp to cool down. So just some walking can be helpful. If you are a fan of like yoga or more static stretching, that can be good for post run or even later in the day, like long after you're done running. But that's it. You don't need to do anything fancy. So just, moving around a little bit, walking, maybe some skipping, jumping, squats right before you start your run, and then a little bit of a walk, maybe some stretching after you cool down. That's really the most important thing at first. What's going to prevent injuries long term is having a strategic training plan so that you're not doing too much too soon when it comes to building your running mileage or volume, eating enough, sleeping enough, and eventually strength training, which you may or may not currently be doing. Stretching doesn't really necessarily predict injury prevention super well in runners. it can be good to do. But it's not the most important thing when it comes to your running performance or injury prevention. So know that your pre-run dynamic warm-up can be like pretty short, a minute or two. And same thing with your cool down. When it comes to during the actual run itself, if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, so I have two speeds. I have walking and I have attempting to run. Like there's no gears. Running's really, really hard. Like I'm just trying to get my heart rate up and it goes up real quickly as soon as I start to have my feet leave the ground. Then that's great. My biggest advice for all new runners is to go slow. And you might be like, well, yeah, obviously I'm slow. I'm like, I can barely run. But like what I mean is like take the pressure off of yourself to go fast. Just go slow. Go a little bit faster than a walking pace. Go slow. Take your time because building your running endurance is going to be best when you run slowly. So we actually can build quite a bit of aerobic fitness running very slowly. It's not necessarily better to run as fast as you can or to sprint for like the majority of your running during the week. The majority of your running during the week, even for like elite Olympic athletes, is to run at a conversational or quote unquote easy effort. When you first start out running, nothing's going to feel easy about it. It's probably going to feel pretty hard. But take the pressure off of yourself by saying, okay, I don't got to go faster than this. I can actually run slower if I want to. Take it at a nice, like slow jog. And this is typically going to be more enjoyable because you're going to be able to run a little bit further if you're going slower. And eventually you will get faster over time, just naturally, because that's how you build running economy and running endurance is by running slow. So eventually, when you've built some endurance, that's when we can add in things like sprints and speed work and find your different running gears where you're like, I'm running fast. Now I'm running slow. Now I'm running medium. But you really don't need to worry about this at first. I just find that most people, when they try out running, they think they have to like sprint and they get, 20 seconds into the run and they're like, I'm toast. I suck at running. This hurts my body. I'm never doing this again. No, we should just be like, okay, let's just take it at a little bit of an easy lope, an easy jog. We're just getting our heart rate up a little bit more from walking. Another really big tip that I have is use walk run intervals. I have coached pretty high level athletes who use run walk intervals, who run really, really fast race times, but to train, they use run walk intervals. This is also a really good just entry level thing that you can be doing when you start your running journey. This is what I did. I'm going to run to the stop sign and then I'm going to walk to the mailbox and then I'm going to run to the next intersection and then I'm going to walk across the intersection and then I'm going to run to this landmark and then I'm going to walk to this landmark. It doesn't have to be something that's super formal, but it can really help you build that running endurance. Walking builds running endurance. Sure, we have to run to get better at running. And walking builds running endurance really, really well. I actually walked my first half marathon and my first full marathon. This was like before I even knew what these distances were. I was doing like a breast cancer walk to fundraise money with my mom and my aunt. And that's how I got into running after, was that I had walked these long distances and that made my entry into running a lot better and smoother because I already had built a lot of that time on my feet walking. So if you're already like, oh, I walk a ton, that's great. Keep doing that. And then add a little bit of running intervals to your walks, or add, 10 minutes of running and then walk for 10 or 20 minutes and then make it, 13 minutes of running and then walk the rest. And then maybe 15 minutes of running and then walk the rest, or do those run walk intervals. There's a kind of school of training called the Jack Daniels method, the Jeff Galloway method. Those are the two most common, but the Jeff Galloway method is run walk method. And he'll use things like 30-second run and 1 minute walk intervals or 1 minute run, 1 minute walk intervals. So if this is something that you really like too, there's apps you can use. There's training plans you can find for free online, and there's so much you can do with run walk. I also have a Couch to 5K program that includes some walking that I'll link in the show notes as well, if that's something that you're interested in. But include walking. It's really important and it's only going to help you. So the next thing that we want to think about, which if you caught the name of this podcast, it is nutrition related, is fueling. So when you start adding more physical activity to your routine, know that running, again, any like pace of running, any speed is very high intensity. Even if you're quote unquote slow or quote unquote not doing that much, running is a very high intensity sport and activity, and it requires a lot of energy. And I know a lot of people get into running for like weight loss, and it it can help with that, but it's also very catabolic, which means it breaks you down. And if you're not careful about fueling adequately, you may find yourself with bone injuries, feeling really run down, and messing up your hormones, essentially. So, how we combat this and keep running a very like health promoting activity is we make sure we're eating enough. Um, I've got, I mean, thousands of hours of content for free on this podcast and also on my social media and on my blog and across various free platforms that you can learn more about what that looks like. But the tips I'll leave you with for this episode, for the sake of this episode, is making sure that you do eat before you run and after. I've got a free guide on some examples of what you could have before and after. That would be a good idea, and hashtag dietitian approved in the show notes. You can just download the free Fueling on the Run guide. But basically, to sum it up, pre-run, we want carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are our friend, especially before a run. So this could be, like a breakfast meal with like a bagel, peanut butter, and banana, or maybe a bowl of oatmeal with some berries and nuts. It could be toast with eggs. If you've got, an hour plus to digest. If you don't have that long to digest, or maybe you're running later in the day and it's been a little bit since you've eaten, or you're just like rolling out of bed first thing in the morning and you're like, I got, 20 minutes before I get out the door. Very simple carbohydrates are going to be your friend because they're going to digest more quickly and they're going to give you that quick source of energy. Your body absolutely torches carbohydrates. Just because you're a human, but even more so when you add in a higher intensity activity like running. So this could be something like an applesauce pouch or a banana or a couple sips of lemonade or sports drink, or even like some gummy candy, or like dates or something like that. Very easy to digest carbohydrates that it could be cereal. There's a lot of examples again on that free guide if you want to go download it, but these simpler carbohydrates are going to digest more quickly and give you less potential GI issues when you're running, and still give you the energy that you're looking for, even if you don't have a lot of time to digest. For post-run, so after you're done running, we typically want to eat something within like 30 minutes. You may not always feel hungry, which may surprise you. Some people do feel hungry when they're done with physical activity, and some people don't. It just kind of depends on like the person and how physically active you just were. Sometimes higher intensity exercise like running can shunt a lot of blood away from your GI tract, which makes you not feel super hungry when you are done doing the activity. And refueling post-workout has to be more of an act of self-care rather than like super intuitive. Maybe you finish an activity and you're like, no, Holly, I'm starving. Like, that's no problem. That's great too. There's nothing wrong with you if that's the case. But know that we should be eating post-run no matter what. So our friends post-run are going to be carbohydrates still, because you just torched through a bunch of carbohydrates, and also protein. So this could be just a meal. It could be any of those breakfast meals that I listed earlier. It could be like a Greek yogurt bowl with some berries and granola. It could be a turkey sandwich with like an apple and some carrots. It could be like a protein shake and a banana until you go get your next meal. There's a lot of examples again on my free fueling guide, but it should include both carbohydrates and protein. What I said about wearing wearables and not paying attention to the calorie burn number. When we start to get into, I burned this many calories exercising, so let me eat back that many calories, or let me try not to eat back that many calories because I'm trying to lose weight. This is a very unhealthy way to look at exercise, body composition, and health. It's actually clinically considered on the cusp of eating disorder behavior to use exercise as a way to burn off calories. Not something that I think is pointed out enough in the fitness world. It's something that I think is actually very normalized by the fitness world when it shouldn't be, because it is clinical eating disorder behavior. So when we talk about fueling, when you hear me talk about fueling on this episode and in anything else that you may come across on my platforms, I'm always talking about fueling preemptively for the activity you're going to do, fueling during the activity if it's an hour plus, and refueling after. I'm never talking about, hey, how many calories did you burn? Eat that many back. Because that's not effective, and it's actually dangerous to think that way from a mental health standpoint and therefore a physical health standpoint. So you're going to hear me talk about, hey, this is an appropriate thing to eat pre-run for XYZ reasons, science, and this is an appropriate thing to have post-run to help you refuel, start to recover, and start to have some energy so you can go do the rest of your day after doing that bout of physical activity and maintain a healthy relationship with food. Know that if you do have like digestive issues when you run or after, or when you start to incorporate eating before and after, again, use the free guide, start small if it's something that intimidates you, and work your way up from there, because the gut is something that can be trained and needs to be trained just like your muscles. If you were like, I want my biceps to be stronger and I've never lifted a weight before, so let me start with a 100-pound bicep curl. That would be a horrible idea, right? You're going to start where you're at. You're going to start small. Your gut's the same way, just like training a muscle. So we do want to start small and work our way up from there if you do have any GI issues, and know that that's something that I can help you with if you need help troubleshooting. If you're out of activity, if you're running, or even if you do like a run and then maybe you go and do a strength training workout or a longer walk or something additional afterwards is longer than an hour, you need to start bringing fuel and hydration during those bouts of activity, because it will help your performance and your recovery and reduce health risks. If you want to fuel and hydrate during things that are shorter than an hour because you think you need it, or maybe you have like blood sugar control issues, that's totally fine too. That's definitely something you can do. So just know that things like gels and sports chews and gummy candy and sports drinks like Gatorade, they all exist for a very good reason to fuel during activity when it is an hour plus. So if you're just starting out running and you're like, I can't dream of running for an hour plus right now, and you're tooting me out. If you catch the bug and you want to keep going and building some endurance, again, come back to this information because you'll need it later. But maybe you are already there. Maybe you're like, yeah, I caught the bug and I signed up for a half marathon and I'm wondering how to fuel. And if that's the case, hey, you're in the right place. Welcome to Holly Fuel Nutrition. Check out all the links in the show notes for resources and all the other podcast episodes that whoever sent you to this show wanted to help with, because that's what I do for a living. I help people fuel their endurance activities and their health goals. Kind of the next pillar is, if something hurts, if you feel an injury coming on, or you're like, my shins hurt, or my knee hurts, or my hip hurts, or my calf hurts, or my foot hurts, take a day off. This is really hard to hear because we start to run and we're like, I love running. This is fun. I want to do it. And that's usually when people start to hurt themselves because maybe they did too much too soon, or their body's just not used to the pounding yet and it's still building strength. Know that we typically will build cardiovascular fitness a little bit quicker than strength. So a lot of runners do get musculoskeletal injuries when they're feeling pretty good and fit. And it's because their cardio is basically getting better faster than their strength. So picking up strength training, weights, physical therapy can be helpful to keep those things a little bit more even if you don't have a huge strength training background. But just know that if something hurts, just take a day off, see if it feels better. A lot of runners, when they're starting out, will try to just stick to a training plan come hell or high water. And that's not necessarily going to get you to your goals. We need to be a little bit flexible. And as a running coach, none of my clients are doing 100% of their training plan. We're adjusting it around life, if they get sick, if they get injured, and we're trying to prevent things from getting worse. So take a day off and maybe see if it feels better. Try running every other day, especially at first when you're first starting out, because that can just help you build some endurance with adequate recovery time as you get to become a more efficient athlete, and a more efficient runner, and your body catches up in terms of the strength component. If it still hurts after like a week or two and you're like, oh, it's getting worse, or it's really impacting like how I feel at rest or just going through my activities of daily living, I'm kind of like limping, or, it hurts, and I'm thinking about it all the time, then find a sports PT. So find a sports physical therapist. Yeah, you might be like, I'm not a real athlete though. I barely do anything, or I don't feel like I deserve to have a sports PT. Yes, you do. That's literally what they're for. They're mostly helping recreational athletes who love to move their bodies and want to keep doing so. And sometimes when we move our bodies, we get injured, and it happens. It's okay. Really finding a sports specific physical therapist, worth their weight in gold. They can help you get back on the road so quickly compared to trying to just like take extra rest and do it yourself, which is why I say like take a day off and see if it feels better, and then keep going every other day. But if it's still hurting you after several runs or after like a week or two, it's worth just going to find a sports PT. And sometimes it can take a little bit to get in to see them to make an appointment. So highly recommend getting one. Definitely worth every single penny, and a lot of the times covered by insurance. But they can help you understand your unique strengths and weaknesses, why you might have gotten injured, and some exercises to give you to help you continue to run and not be injured. And the more you get into any sport, I think the more important this can be. Also, revisit if your shoes need to be updated. Do they have at least 300 miles on them, or have you had them for several years? Either or, yeah, you probably need new running shoes, and that might also really help. So if something hurts, take a day off, maybe try running every other day, especially at first. If it's still bothering you or it's getting worse after a week or two, find a sports PT. Make sure that your shoes don't need to be changed. The last topic is just have fun with it. Even listening to this podcast episode, if anything felt like overwhelming, don't be overwhelmed. Go back to the basics. You need running shoes, and you want to get out there and try not to go too fast, basically. And once you decide, hey, I actually like this, or I'm getting something positive out of this, you can come back and revisit this episode, and I bet you'll like absorb more things than you did listening to it the first time. If you are a seasoned runner and you're listening to this episode because you like being here, first of all, thank you. I'm really glad to have you here. But you might have even absorbed something. You might have been like, oh yeah, it used to be really simple back when I was just starting out, and I've made it really complicated. Maybe I should revisit running without a watch, or maybe I should revisit, going to get refitted for running shoes because it's been a while. Or maybe I forgot about fueling pre and post run, or I don't do a dynamic warm up, or I make things really complicated and I could simplify it a lot. This last topic's for everybody in those categories. So have fun with it. If signing up for like a race or a goal speaks to you, then do that. You can do mile races, 5Ks, which is 3.1 miles. You can do a 10K, which is 6.2 miles. You could do 10-mile races. You can do half marathons, which are 13.1 miles. You can do marathons, which are 26.2 miles. You could do ultra marathons, which are anything over 26.2 miles. You can do like triathlons and swim runs and all kinds of different sports. So you can do trail races, road races, track races, and everything in between. So if that sounds exciting to you and you are a goal-oriented person and you're like, oh yeah, if I put something on the calendar, it's going to make me really excited to get out there and have a goal to shoot for, go for it. Know that you want to give yourself a lot of time and flexibility, especially if you are starting out. Just like if you're really like, I haven't done much fitness at all and I'm trying to get into it by running because it seems really accessible. Know that to train for your first 5K, you probably want at least like 6 to 8 weeks. To train for your first 10K, you probably want at least like 8 to 12 weeks. To train for your first half marathon, you want probably at least like 14 to 16 weeks. And to train for your first marathon, I mean, You really want at least 6 months, but for a lot of people, if you're coming like off the couch and you've just got really not much fitness, you want to give yourself at least a year to train for your first marathon. And you want to hit a lot of these other milestones like the 5K and the half marathon first, so you can make little goals along the way. If training for races doesn't sound fun to you, don't do it. You don't have to do it. I think there's a lot of shiny, sparkly, like emphasis on races right now. And I think they're great. You know, I think they get the local community together. They support good causes. They make you have a goal on the calendar. They make you get outside your comfort zone, prove to yourself and, you know, that you can do hard things. You can take them really seriously. You can also, you know, not take them seriously at all. You can show up and walk. You can show up with like a stroller if that's allowed, and, you know, just kind of go at your own pace. And really have fun with it. But you also don't need to run races at all to be like a real runner or to get into this sport. You know, if paying for a race or, you know, putting something on the calendar kind of stresses you out, or you don't have anything accessible near you, or nothing just like sounds fun, then like don't do it. You can also put just time trials or self-made races on your calendar. Like I would really like to complete a 10-mile distance by this date, even though it's not like a formal race. I think a lot of people got into running during the pandemic for that reason, because you could just go out and do it outside, which I think is really cool. I certainly got more into the running scene during the pandemic for that reason. But yeah, know that you don't need to do a race to be a real runner either. And if you're listening to this and you're a seasoned runner and you're like, yeah, I've always done races because it seems like the thing to do, but lately they haven't been that fun. They've just been really stressful. Like you don't need to do a race to be a real runner, even if you did races before. Okay. Keep that in mind. You can join like a social like running club or a running group. This can be in person or virtual. A lot of the times at your local gyms, breweries, for some reason, beer and running go together a lot. They don't have to if you don't drink, but you know, libraries, that type of thing. You know, check the local community, check your local Facebook groups. And a lot of the times there are some group runs or run clubs that you can be a part of for free. You just have to show up. There's more formal ones too, where you pay and you get some perks, but this is certainly something you can do to meet people, just again, to be encouraged to go run. Sometimes they're at night after work. Sometimes they're in the morning on the weekend. So just keep in mind what works for your schedule. And again, know that you don't have to do this either. If you're like, nah, I showed up and everyone was faster than me and I hated it, and I never want to do that again, you don't have to. You know, again, this is something you're doing for yourself. So make it as convenient and fun for yourself as possible so that it can continue to challenge you, but also be health promoting. So that's something you can do to make it a bit more of a social activity. You can get your kids involved if you have kids, you know, stroller runs, running with your kids. There's a series called Healthy Kids Running Series and Girls on the Run, where your kids, you know, sign up for this group and they can run. And sometimes the parents get involved and there's like a parent run too, or you're just being active with them while you're there. You get your dog involved. You know, if you've got a pet, you could go for runs with your dog, if that's safe for them to do. Get other things involved in case you need a little bit more motivation or you need running to fit into your lifestyle. If you are a parent or you're busy or you've got a dog that needs some activity, that's definitely something you can do. And again, go slow, start off slow, small bites at a time. You can also listen to like music, podcasts, audiobooks. I've got a lot of people who will like reserve their running or their walking or their exercise for like listening to a special audiobook, or if they're at the gym, they'll watch a show that they only watch when they're running. And it just makes it a fun, enjoyable experience and makes it go by a little bit faster. You can also not listen to anything. I think that's a fun challenge if you don't have much time just with your own thoughts all day. I think running can be very meditative for people in that way, myself included. Sometimes listening to nothing is just what you need. But if you get bored of music, there's other stuff once you're out there for a long time. So don't forget about that too. Go run new places if you can. If you get bored of your same couple of blocks, go to the track, go to the gym on the treadmill, go to the beach. Don't run on the sand though. It's not great for you, unless you're used to it. Maybe run on the road, but go to your local trail, go somewhere safe that you feel comfortable, just again, to change the scenery. Sometimes that can make a really big difference if you're in a bit of a funk or if you just want this to be like a fun, enjoyable experience. And again, be proud of yourself and keep going. Running's hard. It's really hard. I hated it for a very, very long time. I got out of doing gym in high school because I was in other sports that didn't involve running. And it was because I wanted to leave early so I could go do those sports. But it was also because I didn't like running. So it's really funny to me that I'm here now, obsessed with running, talking about it all the time professionally for a living with other runners. So running's really hard. So know that if you're wanting to do it, then you should. That's enough. If you've got the motivation to want to do it, that's all you need. That's enough. Just put one foot in front of the other, go slow, run to like something you can see on the street at first and then walk, and be proud of yourself for continuing to keep going and putting one foot in front of the other. Know that stats exist, like less than 1% of the population has completed a marathon. So even if you're surrounded by really like fit, active people and it feels like everyone I know is so fit and so active and running a lot and can do this no problem, know that the majority of the population is not like that at all. And just for getting out there, even if it's running to the end of your driveway, you're doing the thing. You're doing awesome. Be proud of yourself. Keep going and make sure that you are giving yourself that positive reinforcement, because a lot of the times no one else is going to do it for you. You're the one stuck in your own head all day. So make sure you're talking nice to yourself, because that translates really well to life, but also sports psychology. Know that once you start getting into longer distances, like half marathon and marathon, it can help a lot to have a training plan, or a coach, depending on what you prefer and what's in your budget. Having a sports physical therapist, having a sports dietitian, and also having specific extra things added on to like your yearly blood work, that's specific to athletes that I've got episodes on here about, including the previous one. There's specific nutrition recommendations. I know that this is like a good thing. It's normal to have like a coach and like people on your team, even if you're not a professional athlete. It's not like extra. You're taking care of yourself so that you can keep getting out there without getting hurt. Because a lot of the times, because running is such a repetitive activity, you're literally doing single leg jump squats from one leg to the other over and over and over and over and over again. People can be prone to injury, but if you are able to stay strong and fuel really well and recover really well, running is not bad for your knees. Running is actually really good for your knees and your joints and your muscles and your cardiovascular health and your cholesterol and your blood sugar and your mental health. It's good for so many things as long as we support our bodies through it. And asking for help by having a training plan, a coach, a sports PT, a sports dietitian is a positive thing, and it is not extra at all. So know that those things exist. If you need extra support, there's a lot of free resources online, that I post about all of this stuff, that you can find too, that you could probably change your life with pretty easily just by listening to the free stuff. So hopefully this is helpful. I hope that, it motivated you to get out there, have some ideas to make it like an enjoyable experience for yourself. And remember, this is supposed to be challenging, but fun. So it's like Ron Weasley says, you're going to suffer, but you're going to be happy about it. So again, it's supposed to be challenging, but also fun. So make it that way for yourself. If you're like, I only find it absolutely miserable and challenging, then maybe you need some new shoes. Maybe you need a training plan. Maybe you need to listen to an audiobook. Maybe you need to slow down. You need to do some stuff to make it more enjoyable for yourself. Maybe you need to set goals along the way to your long-term goals. So if you're like, I really want to run a 5K, but right now I can't even run a minute, then make the goal to run a minute first. And then once you run a minute, you're going to be like, sweet, now I want to run 2 minutes. And make those little goals along the way, because, it's kind of like if you were to start and say, I want to get a PhD, but you're still in middle school, that could be really overwhelming. So we have to make these little goals along the way. And I'd love to be a part of your journey if you need help. So check out the link in my show notes for all those resources I talked about during this episode. Send it to a friend if it made you think of someone who could benefit from this info. And I'll see you all in the next one.